Where's the clapperboard?
Is it recording?
And action! So, can you introduce yourselves first of all?
I'm Betty, and I'm Anneliese's grandma.
I'm Walter, and I'm Betty's husband.
And my granddad.
Anneliese's granddad.
I was saying, doesn't it?
Can you tell me a bit about what you like to read?
Well, I like to read something that's exciting. I've just started reading Linda LaPlante's novels at the moment. And what are those other novels we read? John
Grisham,
yeah.
Lee Child.
Do you like crime fiction the
Yes,
best?
crime fiction. And I do like things that are sometimes true stories, as long as they're not too sad. You know.
For instance, she's just been reading The Island by Victoria Hislop. That's why I bought the book there, and you can see the title of it.
I haven't started it.
Oh, you haven't started it?
But I have read it before,
You've read it
but
before.
I can't remember it, so I'm going to read it again.
Did you hear?
It's about the
Yeah,
leper colony. And it isn't a true story, but she's done a lot of research, so she thinks it's almost like...
Yeah, but she
the
had
thing.
leprosy, hadn't she?
Not the writer.
Oh, that was, yeah.
No.
Where you were talking.
And what about you, Grandad? What's the last book you read? Can you remember?
It was a Linda LaPlante one. That's the one there, I think. Clean cut. Trouble is that the ones we got of Linda LaPlante's are hardbacks and they're heavy. I'd much rather read a paperback.
Yeah.
'Cause
So-
when you get these A4, well they're not A4, but they're A5 at least books, they don't hardly weigh a ton.
Mm.
But then when you've been reading them,
Well, that's why you like the Kindle,
That's
isn't
why
it?
I
Yeah.
like the Kindle, because with having rheumatic in my hands now, I find it uncomfortable holding a book for a long time, where that you can just prop it up against you and just click your thumb down and turn the page. And
apart from that,
I find it very good, and you can have the writing as big as you want to.
Mm.
So it's great if you can't find your glasses.
you can get a Linda LaPlante for about £1.50 at charity shop. If you go on a Kindle, it's about 7 or 8 quid, so
Really?
that's another incentive.
You do get some free books.
Well, all the
But
classics.
what
are
you
free,
tend to do, I got one book and it was free, but if you want to read the follow-ups, you have to buy them then. But they're reasonable. Yeah. If I have read a good story that I think he'll like, I said to him, I'll borrow my Kindle, and we go to bed and he can. I've bought a light that you can clip on, so he can read his book, and with the light on, and I can have the light off in the bedroom and go to sleep. So it's great, that, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
When you were younger, did you read a lot of books? When you were children?
never had time, did you, Bet?
I didn't read a lot when I was very young, because we didn't have a lot. With not having much money at all, we didn't have many books. And then when I got old enough to go to the library, I did, and school as well. And I got a prize from school, and it was called Heidi. And it were a lovely illustrated book, and I loved it. And it were a prize for, I think it for art, I got it. And I treasured that book.
That your favourite book then?
It was at the
Yeah.
time then, and in my memory it is, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, with having younger sisters at that time, they used to want to always look at this book, and I'd show them the pictures and read them little bits of it. But I kept it in the top shelf of the top cupboard at home. We only had a small house, and when I came home from work one day, I found this book on the table, and it had all been scribbled in with pencil and that, and pen, and I couldn't rub it out. And the young ones, the littler ones, my mother had, they were being naughty, so she gave them the book to look at, and she didn't know they'd scribbled in it.
Oh.
And I was so upset and so annoyed, and we had open fire them days. And I remember getting the book and throwing it on the fire. I was so angry and so upset. And I wished I hadn't done that,
Yeah.
because it would have still, there'd have been pages all right, you know, but I remember doing that,
Oh.
probably in a temper.
What about you, Grandad? Did you read much when you were younger?
I used to read lots of light things, you know, but one of the main things, my dad just, who I never saw read much, he bought himself a complete set of Dickens, including his life story and everything he'd done. And we had that in the house, and I used to read that pretty early on, as soon as I could make sense of it. But the trouble was, it was very tiny print. It was something like about, 64 if it was that. And the letters were so small, you could hardly read them. And it was a real chore to read it.
Did your parents read you stories ever? Or tell you stories? They make them up?
No, I don't remember.
My dad was a
I don't remember them ever
very
doing.
keen newspaper reader from way back. You remember that? You probably won't remember. It's probably going now, or it's just finished. The Dandy.
Yeah. Used to get it every week.
I get that every publication, the Dandy, right? If I'd have saved the first few copies I could have got, I'd been with a fortune.
Wow. How much did it cost? Can you remember?
Penny of that.
I remember it being tuppence. We couldn't afford comics when I was little, and the only newspapers were, I remember my grandma who lived across road, when she'd finished with her newspaper, she'd bring it across road for me mum and dad to read. And I never read it. I don't think I were allowed to read it. But then, in any case, when they'd finished reading it, it got cut up into squares, put on a piece of string for toilet paper in the toilet.
Oh, everybody did that.
Did you read it while you were on the toilet?
And that were one time when you did. And you'd sit on toilet, you'd have a bit, and you'd be interested, and then you couldn't see it. You'd miss the end of it, you couldn't find the end of it.
Because you only had a square.
I never did, because there was no light in our toilet. It was at the back of the
didn't.
house, down the yard.
We didn't have a light in the toilet, but we had a window. We didn't even have a radio. And I used to go across to my grandma's to listen certain radio programmes like Dixon of Dock Green, about
PC-49.
PC-49 and Wilfred Pickles.
Yeah.
What was that?
Have a go.
That were have a go, Joe, go on, have a go. That was his signature tune, and it were a contest. And if somebody won it, he'd say, "Put the money on the table, Mabel."
I've
Mabel
never
were
heard
his
of Wilfred
wife.
Pickles.
No.
He was a Yorkshire, but tight as a fish's backside he was.
Was it a drama? They're not real people.
No, they were just they had people doing. I can't
He's
remember
a bit
what
like
kind
the
of
poor
things
man's
they did.
Jimmy Savile, early on in his life, you know. Although I didn't think anything went
No,
with
they
it.
used to have
We
contests.
always had a radio. They were
Oh.
really interesting. I spent a lot of my time listening to the radio.
My father were interested in radio, and I remember him having what they called a crystal set, and he made his own out of this crystal set, and you could hear
Yeah, my dad did.
very faintly. And then we'd sometimes have a radio, but then when we had no money, he'd sell that for get a pint, money for go for a pint in pub.
Did you used to tell stories to your brothers and sisters?
Oh, I did. I used to I'd come home from, even when I were working, when I first started work, I'd come home and my mum would say, "Oh, they're driving me mad, will you take them to bed for me?" The younger ones. And quite often I'd take them to bed and tell them stories, and they fell asleep, and then I woke up and it was middle at night and I was still in bed dressed. I had to get up and get undressed then. But I used to tell them stories, and they remember that, my younger brothers and sisters.
Can you remember the stories?
No, I used to just make them up about animals, really. And I often think I might, if I could have had a bit of encouragement, I might have been able to write little stories years ago, you know. But
Did you write them at school?
Not really, no. But it wasn't a marvellous school I went to, really. I was good at games, good at needlework and embroidery and cooking. I was captain at netball team. Anything like that, and art.
Yeah.
I passed to go to art school, but I only went a couple of times, and I only had a little box of Woolworths paint, so the other people were like people from, I was one of the poorer ones there, they were like from grammar school, they had boxes, wooden boxes with lovely paints in. So I felt inferior, so I stopped going, unfortunately.
What about you, Grandad? Did you like writing stories when you were younger? Or telling them?
I
You
didn't
like
write.
writing poetry?
I used to write
For you?
poetry a bit,
Yeah.
but funny things,
Like when I'd had a baby and he'd write one about when I had your mum in hospital, didn't you?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I've got it
Can you
somewhere,
remember
but I
any
don't-
of them?
Oh my goodness. It was that good, it's forgotten. I
No.
don't know what it is really. I can write when I put my mind to
I
it.
think he
you
could
know.
write, and he's often said he wished he did, but he's
Yeah, but
never
I'm sure he'll got down
motivated himself.
Yeah.
but I'm a bit of a butterfly span of attention. I flit from one thing to another.
What were your favourite subjects?
At school?
Yeah.
Well, they were mainly scientific ones, physics, chemistry, both maths, pure and applied maths.
So do you think I got any of my writing genes from either of you?
No.
So.
Yeah, I used to like telling stories to children when I took them to bed, but it were always something probably about a ladybird who had all these little children, ladybird children, and she had to go and find food for them, and she left them alone in her house. And
I don't call that. I've done that kind of thing.
I've done that,
All them
and-
stories, mate.
well, they were what I
Yeah,
call
stories,
stories.
yeah.
And she was so tired on the way back, carrying all this nectar and that for her babies, that she sat on her rose, and this bee come and said, "What are you doing sitting on my rose?" Them kind of stories.
Yeah.
I can remember them kind of things.
Where do you think I get my storytelling genes from then?
Well, I don't know.
I think you were.
Your dad, you probably get your interesting words from your granddad.
Yeah, I think when they
I
were,
weren't very clever at
when they
school.
were younger, they were surrounded by books in the house, weren't they? And
Yeah.
encouraged to read things. And
Probably
Or
from your
so,
dad.
Yeah.
Really, I think.
if you're given a library of books at various times that interest in you,
I don't
Well,
remember
particularly-
telling you stories very much when you came
I
to
remember
stay
getting
with
in bed with you and you telling us stories about ladybirds and
you?
animals.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness. You never told me any story about ladybirds, have you? No.
us. No, you used to tell them stories about somebody called Billy Big Feet.
Oh, well, Billy Big
Who
Feet.
was
So you
Billy
did
Big Feet?
Oh, very well known.
Was he a
You used
naughty
to
boy?
tell children that.
Used to walk around with big feet.
I don't know whether it was the first two or the
Very
second
clumsy,
two.
believe it or not, Billy Big Feet.
So he did tell them stories. Yes,
Yeah,
you did.
it was a story, it was just a bit of a
Yeah.
lark, wasn't it? But I thought, to go back to you and Kirsten, you got that library there, but you also got the luxury of being miles away from anywhere, where you got very few distractions on the street, and you spent your time at home, and you were kind of not forced, but one of your source outlets was reading books.
And
You
writing
obviously got-
stories and writing plays, didn't
Yeah.
you? I can
and you
remember you
actually
doing
got,
that.
because of your environment much as anything, I think.
I think
then
you'd-
you got
I
the
think your
kind
dad.
of ideas, and between your mother and your father, you got a certain level of vocabulary available to you that you just went on from there. Trouble is, it's a bit of once you've got your foot in, you're all right, aren't you? A little bit of notoriety or whatever, depending
I
on
think
the type
it's-
of book you write, you can.
I think it's spoiling it for authors now. These people like Jordan and that who bring books out, and obviously they've had help to write them, haven't they?
well,
And
they
it's
don't- they
it's
don't
just
write them,
about
do they?
things, who wants to. I don't want to know about it, but some people must do. Well,
They say that everybody's got one book inside them. If
Yeah.
you were going to write
Yeah.
one book, have you ever thought what you'd write about?
I think that my life story would be.
I think that's all I could write about, really.
It's staggering when you think about it. My generation, they've gone through everything. They've gone through a period where there was very little technology. The forerunner of everything was the radio. And right to the present day, and there's been a complete world war. They've had to go and serve in the army. In my case, when I went in the army, it was the Korean War, which I fortunately didn't have to go to, because all the people who were doing the job I did in the army were shipped out to Korea because they were the only one who'd been trained, and it left all the rest of the army without these technical people, and they wanted us going in for 18 months, as it was in my time, to fill up the gaps.
So what did you do in the army then?
I was ammunition examiner, which varied from looking at the ammunition and making sure it's it was safe for the troops who were going to fire it to repair it if anything went wrong with it. And when it come to the worst and it was so dangerous that they couldn't do anything with it, we had to blow it up and get rid of it. So it was very interesting.
So can I ask you to tell me the story of how you met?
I was drunk, that's all the excuse I've got.
Well, I went to Hightown Hall. I must have been, were I 15 or nearly 15?
Yeah, I don't know. I think
No,
you lied
I'd be,
about your age
I'd be
even
15
then.
in the October as it were a Christmas dance. Went to
It was
Hightown
Christmas
Hall.
Eve.
Yeah. And I were going to, I'd planned to go to this dance. I'd got tickets to go with my friends. And my mum said, come on, are you coming down Market with me? I'm going and pay me rent. So she went to pay her rent, and as we walked across Hyde Market, there were a store with dresses on them. And my mum said, oh, look at that dress, you would look nice in that for your Christmas dance. She said, go on, I'll buy it, yeah, I won't pay it, I'll miss rent and buy it, yeah. I said, oh, don't miss rent, mum. I had visions of being thrown out. But she did, she missed paying rent and bought me this dress. So I felt really nice in it. And I went to Hightown Hall with my friends. And me and this one friend, the others were dancing. And me and Alice were sat there talking. And she suddenly said to me, oh, look who's just come in, Walter Yates and Alan Batho and this other lad.
There's about 6 of us, weren't there?
There were 3 of you.
Oh,
One were in Army, one were in
Thomas.
Navy and one were in Air Force. And they come in the uniform. And she said, oh, come, Betty, get up and dance with me. So we got up and danced till we come to where they were. And she stopped and said, hello, as though she'd just seen them. Because I didn't know them. And so, as she said, introduced me, like, you know, to them. So this lad in Air Force, tall man in Air Force uniform, he just got hold of me and pulled me on his knee. He said, hello, you were nice. They'd been drinking in Hyde, you see. So your granddad got hold of my hand and pulled me on his knee and said, oh, she's sitting on my knee, he said. I saw her first or something. So anyway, with that I got up demurely, you know, wouldn't sit on his knee. And they were mainly talking to Alice and talking about them, and they were a bit drunk. So they couldn't dance, could you? You didn't dance, did you?
No.
I think they were too drunk then. Anyway, he asked me would I got pictures with him. Right?
Did you like him?
Yes, I liked him, but he'd
I was
also
only on leave. so
he'd
I'd
also
I'd
gone out with
it
this
about
other
a
girl
week.
called Betty. Oh, he said to me, as he pulled me down on his knee, he said, what is your name? I said, Betty. He said, oh, not another Betty. He'd just finished going out with a girl called Betty. But when he was going out with her, this Alice and Maureen Slater and them said, oh, we ought to see what he brought her from Germany, glass nylons and a folding umbrella. And so when
I've
he
got
asked me to
time
go out
for
with
it.
him, I thought, oh, glass nylons and a folding
Oh,
umbrella.
nothing nylons come out when we were though. But it really
I
happened when
liked
we were
him, but
younger,
that were, if I'm honest, you know, me who never had anything.
Did he give you an umbrella?
I did get one eventually.
If you could give me one piece of advice for my life after all the things that you've learnt throughout yours, what would you give me?
I think I don't know, it's perhaps a bit deep. Always be honest with yourself and never do anything that you feel uncomfortable with. I find it, the worst thing you can do is do something in life which you either feel you shouldn't have because it's been deceitful or underhand and somebody might have suffered for it. And whatever you do, I think where I worked at Reynolds James, it's the motto of the bloke who did it was, whatever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might. It was on, as it went in the works. I've often thought that you can't go wrong if you do that. If you all do your best, no matter if it goes wrong, at least you can be happy with yourself. And I've often told you at work, whatever I did, I all did my best. And if somebody came along and said, you've done this, you've done that, I was prepared to say, well, sod it, I did the best I could, and if you don't like it, lump it, you know, and feel happy in myself that I hadn't kind of try to dodge anything. But I've never felt as if I was only doing, oh, I'll do it, you know, that attitude. And I think if you go through life with that attitude, even if you don't get success from it, at least you've got your self-belief and your satisfaction.
And I think
And it means a lot, that.
I think if you just enjoy your life to the best you can, and if you want to do something you can afford it, do it. And just enjoy your life while you're here, and try not to think negative thoughts, because it only makes you make the best of what you've got. That's what I think, don't you? So,
Yeah,
like your granddad's taught me, can you do anything about it? No. Well, why worry? It doesn't help. So I do try to act like that, but you do worry and you do care about people.
Yeah, but we've been fortunate. We've all been in a situation where we've had it.
We've got good children, haven't we? And they're
Yeah.
all good children and grandchildren. You're all lovely.
We've
A
lived
good
them.
interview. Thanks very much. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I'm waiting to you too.
Thank you. You can say bye to the camera.
Bye. Bye. Been nice meeting you.
If it's a bestseller, I want some royalties.